Aw,
By
such
we,
a
you mean
dude.
you?
Such a dude.
What did he say? What kind of facial hair did he say I have?
French
French,
poet.
French.
French poet facial hair.
I am offended that he is calling the mustache phase of my life French poet facial hair.
Mustache face.
This is the mustache phase of my adulting. So,
Bring back the beard phase.
that's a sad phase.
That was a nice Jason. A kinder, gentler Jason.
Lies. Greetings. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. So glad to have you guys here with us live. And of course, glad to have you guys here with us on a rewatch or the audio only podcast as well. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live, as we're constantly adding new shows and doing cross streams with other channels. Speaking of shows, we started the week off with a spicy one. We did something you guys voted for. You said you wanted to see more history shows. And we did that. We did a show about the history of Philippine independence, Professor Dylan Rodriguez, where we had a little bit of a disagreement, you might say, but still a good show was had. And the champagne room was insanity. It's just insanity. So that was fun. Yesterday, Wednesday, Jean Bajlan hosted another White Guy Wednesday. This time he had Patrick from the Hoot and Holler podcast to talk about leftism in flyover states. Episode called Welcome to Small Town America. And again, this weekend we will be doing kind of a fun show. I think we're going to open up the phone lines for that show. We're going to ask the question, is hip hop revolutionary? Is it? And I think I want to open up the phone lines to hear what you guys have to say about that question. Maybe we'll get lucky, like Chuck Deal call or some shit like that. If you're enjoying what we do here and have the means and feel so inclined, you'd like to have access to champagne rooms past and present, there's only one way: become a patron for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours. You can have access to the champagne room, the call-in segments that we do behind this paywall, and you could be in the audience, the live audience, for the Mau Mau Hour hosted by Pascal Robert, and you can join us for movie night. We are having a movie night tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Friday. We'll be showing a movie that you cannot get online. It's not on any streaming services. I looked on YouTube, went through not every VPN. We went through several countries and couldn't find it. Pump Up the Volume, the 1990 Christian Slater classic. We will be having a watch party with that movie. I'm really excited about that. 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're not sure if you want to make the patron commitment, we are running a special right now on TIR where you can try it out for 7 days. You can try out to see if there is enough content for you, enough extra stuff for you to make it worth your while. You can try it out for free. All right. All that out of the way. Let me bring in the faceless voice of reason. Person that I love joking with before we come on air. M. Toussaint.
Hello, hello.
How are you
to be
feeling?
here.
How are you feeling on this fine Thursday?
I'm feeling okay. I just woke up from a stress dream about the show.
Oh no.
I dreamt that you and Bertrand went to like this roller skating rink.
Okay, now we're living in ATL. Was ITI?
No.
Just BTI.
But we had to wear like these puffy vests and puffy coats and stuff, but you guys weren't wearing them. Mm-hmm. And I accidentally bumped into some girl, and then we got into a fight, and you guys were nowhere to be found. And then special guest was Blueface, and we ended up sitting down together, and I was like, Bertrand, what is the appeal of this Blueface guy? And he was like, you gotta understand, he could freestyle over any beat. You could switch the beats on him and it doesn't matter. And I was like, yeah, because he's off beat and he's bad.
You were having some real critical thought.
Bertrand said he would never defend Blueface in such a way.
You know what's funny? That totally sounds like something he would say to me. Jason, you gotta understand, Blueface has the ability. He'd like break it down all scientifically, and I'm like, I don't care what you say.
He has the ability to be offbeat on any beat.
Blueface is the pimpy dude, right?
Pimpy dude, yep.
I discovered him on that show, No Jumper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, I've watched quite a few episodes of that show, and it was fascinating to say the least. Yep. How many people that watch TIR are familiar with No Jumper? I would love to know if there is any sort of No Jumper TIR crossover. I mean, It's not much because their viewing base before everything went to crap on that Adam guy was massive. It was just the pimp dude always yelling at sex workers. That's all I learned from that show. That dude will always yell at them for being out of pocket.
Oh, wow.
Those weren't the episodes you watched?
No.
Blueface was on there. I guess he was a pimp. Was a pimp? Is it was a? Is he locked up too? Everybody that raps, it's like you have to be locked up for something.
He's not locked up. He's free, and he's having a baby with this girlfriend whose tooth he knocked out, I think.
Oh, my goodness! He knocked her tooth out on accident, like they were both skateboarding, and
she bumped into
a jackass like stunt. No,
she bumped into a wall.
She both.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah.
I have no comment. The episode I watched with him, and it was pretty disgusting. And I was like,
yes.
Dare I weep for the future?
Just to be clear, we're laughing at Bertrand's comments in the private chat, not laughing at the situation.
Bertram is a nut in the private chat, by the way. You guys,
he's going nuts in the private
he's
chat.
Having too much fun today.
We need to unleash him.
But he wrote a very serious article that I was very excited about. He is published in the Atlantic. Let's just big up to Bertrand for getting published in the Atlantic. Especially a piece like this is very not Atlantic-y, I think. I don't know what you thought about the piece. Did you dig it, Toussaint?
I thought it was great. Really, really proud of Bertrand for getting into the Atlantic.
You know what I love about Bert is the way he thinks. He's going to create an argument that's going to be bulletproof. He's not even going to present himself until he knows his argument is bulletproof.
You gave the Kanye West Candace Owens. I like the way he thinks. I didn't know where you were gonna go after that. It's just like the way he thinks.
It's like the way he thinks. When Bertrand said Hitler was a really nice guy, I was like, you got a point there.
Yeah.
Autobahn, still around.
Trains were moving on time.
All of them. You're not supposed to laugh at that. Barnes gonna be very upset with that. Affirmative Action, an economic program that was designed to bridge the gap between the sexes and the races, has helped many, but who hasn't really benefited? Did it help to build out the Black middle class? If so, why are so many still left behind? Our guest today has a new piece in The Atlantic that calls out the contradictions in this race-based solution to a level playing field. From his article, many Americans retain a certain dissonance about class, believing simultaneously that it does and does not matter. Would a classroom with one Black student who was raised by parents who met while studying business at Yale benefit from the added diversity of a Black student who was raised in the CUNY Homes projects that produced George Floyd? You would be hard-pressed to find someone who answers no. And it is doubtful that Sotomayor, the Supreme Court justice, would either. But the only way to promote the admission of these two hypothetical Black students is with policies that recognize both class and race. Unfortunately, conversations about diversity too often focus solely on the gaps between Black and white Americans, excluding entirely the issue of class divides among Black Americans. That is from my good friend, play brother extraordinaire. Please welcome my co-pilot to Pioneer Chicken, Bertrand Cooper.
Man, appreciate the kind words from both of you. I'm glad you liked the piece. And honestly, I've waited years, really. The Atlantic is the first magazine that ever turned me down. I've waited years to be able to say something. I've only ever gotten one half of it into mainstream publication. Been able to talk about my own poverty or poverty generally. This is the first time that I got to talk about class disparity between Black Americans front and center in a mainstream publication. And yeah, I'm just glad it, was so well received. But yeah, it feels like a journey because I really tried to say something very, very similar to this back in end of 2018. And well, that pitch didn't go so well. So to finally get that front and center and have it, happening the same week that affirmative action is in the Supreme Court. And, I'm going to take the little bump. I'm glad it came on Juneteenth. That made me smile a little bit.
There's nothing like affirmative action in the Supreme Court. Your piece coming out on Juneteenth. MSNBC is going to have you on soon.
Yeah, I was supposed to be on today, but there was breaking news with that submarine. So they asked if I could reschedule to tomorrow. So I'm going to be there on tomorrow, hopefully. That's just more breaking news. I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Was I disconnected?
For a second.
Okay. Bert, I do want to get into your story a little bit because I don't think people can really understand the piece. And you do talk about it a little bit, but we don't really talk about your life. And of course, we don't have to get into our off-air conversations about our lives. But you are not the Gap model that people think you are. You are a poster boy for biracial advertising. There's a Crest commercial somewhere where you're high yellow behind with that crazy I'm so mixed hair is just front and center.
It's 3A hair.
Well, we call that hair. My white mom did my hair. Like he never had.
Oh, 100%. When I was in high school,
never had a proper fade.
Yeah.
Bert does not know how to act in a Black barbershop.
Bert has the Ben Burgess hair.
This is because I'm living out the dream. I'm going to grow it out. I'm almost to a year. Almost to a year.
Bert always goes to his black friend's house. Goes, why do you guys have all this magic shave? And wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there's links and descriptions of Bert's piece, The Failure of Affirmative Action in the Atlantic. So, Bert, can you tell us a little bit about your life? Because you do mention this in the piece that you started off talking about how a lot of your white colleagues believe that you to be some sort of product of affirmative action, when that could be furthest from the case because of how hard it is to maneuver through the bureaucracy of things like student aid. And a lot of your piece talks about affirmative actions in the school system. So let's start off with your mom. There you
go. Yeah. Let's start with your mom. There we go. So my mom is Jewish and Irish. My dad is black. Both sides of my family have been poor for a generation before I arrived on the scene. And having poverty on both sides, that kind of gave me this window into what poor and working class folks say about policies like affirmative action. There's a lot of stories going on around it, about it. And, you know, what I was exposed to, particularly through my white grandmother, and this is something I talk about in the piece, was just this idea that affirmative action is this suite of policies out there that pretty much guarantees that, you know, anyone who's black is getting preferential treatment and a free ride to college. And, you know, I've been hearing this from the time I was very, very, very young. I remember in elementary school just kind of being told like, oh, because of affirmative action, going to college is a given. The thing is that I actually was, you know, poor, and I had to go through the process. I went through the application process for college. I've helped other people go through that process, and that all happened, you know, while affirmative action was still in effect. And I got to see what was actually out there if you were black and poor and applying to school. And, you know, what I experienced for the most part was apathy in high school, you know, on behalf of counselors and things like that. You know, when I finally had to apply to college, and I talk about this a little bit in the piece, but basically at the time that I'm applying to school or applying to college, I'm on my third high school. I've been somewhere between foster and transients pretty much the entire time.
Now, you were getting kicked out for fighting and you stabbed someone. Your story is very similar to that of Ben Carson, right?
And then you pretended to be Native American. Don't leave that out.
So Bertrand says in the piece that apparently let's you know, he's not telling you guys the whole truth here. So Bertrand,
you want? Oh, no, let me. I'll do it.
You have to tell the Native American story.
Yeah. So everyone black will know this. Anytime you are light skinned or you got like a strong nose bone or high cheekbones, there's somebody swearing up and down that you're like Cherokee or Choctaw somewhere in the family. And my dad's family is an old light-skinned family, and they have the same story. And he told that story to my mom, that he was black and Cherokee and all that stuff. And she told my grandmother, her mom. And so my grandmother's under the assumption that me being black and Native American, like I'm definitely getting a free ride to go to college. And, you know, I've done the 23andMe. I'm not Native at all. There's nothing indigenous in there. It's all, it's what it normally is. It's, you know, white masters and people being slaves. That's how it happens. I don't know what else to say.
And she was under the assumption, right, that, you know, because of the Native, because of the black, you have this double advantage to get into any university you want to get into, because that's just the way systems work. Native Americans get free everything. Black people get preferential treatment. And because you are both of these magical things, then you're going to get into school. You find out that's not true. I'm assuming you asked a counselor at some point, hey, is there any scholarships for light-skinned kids with good hair that could possibly be Native American?
So by the time I get to high school, so just to take it back a little bit, anyone who's been around like lower white working class has heard some of these, you know, classic stories of Native Americans get better welfare, free college, Hispanic kids can go to hospitals and get free medical care. Asian folks, when they come over, They're getting interest-free loans to start businesses, and that's why they own restaurants. And Black people are getting, first in line for every government job and also getting free college. And so I grew up with that. By the time I get to high school, I don't really believe the indigenous thing anymore. I've been around enough to know like every light-skinned Black family says that shit, and it's probably not true. But I let the counselor know. It says it right there on my report. I always put that I was Black. It says it on there. I had tested well in my SAT. I was kind of expecting the counselor would tell me like what was available. Everybody had always told me that there were scholarships essentially just for being Black, because that's the information that, poor folks have. They just think you're Black, you're going to college. All my counselor actually does is hand me a pamphlet for the FAFSA. If you've never filled it out, it's the application for federal aid. And I was eligible for a ton of aid because, my dad had just got out of prison. My mom was literally missing. But to fill out this form and to get all the aid that I was entitled to, I had to prove that I was in that situation, that I was essentially a ward of the state. But to do that, you need, community testimony on official letterhead. And I'm 17, 18. I haven't even been here that long. There is no community around me. That's kind of, intrinsic to being foster and homeless, is you don't have a bunch of community elders waiting to fill out anything on an official letterhead. So I just don't get the aid that I'm entitled to. And, I moved through an associate's, a bachelor's, and then a master's degree, just accruing debt along the way, even though had I been able to fill out the FAFSA correctly, if I had had those resources, my whole undergraduate education would have been paid for. And, that was back I'm 35 now, so it was a while ago, but I have a younger foster sister who was born in 2000, and I've helped her through her college process and gone through the FAFSA. And now I know everything that I didn't know before. And the process really hasn't changed. And within that process is this thing called additional verification, where they just randomly select folks and ask you for more paperwork, more proof of your claims on your FAFSA. And until you fill it out, until you get everything squared away, they can hold back your aid, and they can hold it back for a whole semester. And if you can't pay out of pocket, you just don't get to go that semester, or you lose whatever little bit of savings you have. And these are the actual resources that have been available under affirmative action. That's the experience for most poor folks, and poor Black folks in particular. What I do in the piece is I take my little personal experience of this kind of patchwork of support systems, this bureaucracy that you have to know how to navigate to even get the aid that's promised you. All of that happens under the old regime of affirmative action that people will soon be, missing when the Supreme Court comes out with its decision. That was my unique experience. But when you expand it, you go to the National Center for Education Statistics, which is, backed by the U.S. Census. And their finding is that for low-income high schoolers, we'll get into that term in a second. For low-income high schoolers, only 14% of them go on to obtain a bachelor's degree. So at a national level, over 80% of low-income high schoolers don't obtain a bachelor's degree. Assuming those same numbers for Black folks, we're in a situation where, again, over 80% of low-income Black high schoolers aren't getting bachelor's degrees. So this idea that folks have in their head that out there is just this affirmative action that's, writing blank checks to help poor Black people in particular get into college, it's just not there. And it hasn't been there. And affirmative action, as we've currently had it, it's been this way since 1978. We've had 45 years of this policy that allows you to consider race in admissions. We have the evidence that it just did not help poor Black people. So that was really the impetus for writing this. It's just that I knew that it wasn't true for me. I have the friends who didn't graduate high school. And then I have, the data from the National Center of Education Statistics saying, yeah, over the decades, poor folks in general and poor Black folks, most likely, have not been obtaining bachelor's degrees. So this makes you look at affirmative action a little bit differently. I start with the story about the working class, and they have these very jaundiced, hostile stories. But even the people who don't have that version, every time that affirmative action comes under attack, a lot of my college educated peers assumed that I was one of the people who would feel that attack more acutely, because there's just this very strong association between Black people and poverty. And as long as that association persists, you can't have a policy that is thought to help Black people without the American imagination going straight to, oh, it must be helping the poorest Black people. But the data doesn't show that. And actually,
well, I wanted to ask you about that, because you do actually talk about that, and you do break down a lot of that data in the piece, actually, especially when it comes to Harvard admissions. And when you talk about Harvard admissions, apparently they were criticized for not having a large Black population, but their admissions go up. But what is the class makeup of the majority of the Black Harvard population?
So this is really fascinating because I knew this behind the scenes. Most of the work that folks have seen from me when I'm using data, they'll very often see these qualifiers where I say, if this study also applies to Black folks, this is what the numbers would be. Working with the Atlantic, we're able to be in contact with Harvard directly. And they confirmed for us that they do not track income within race. Harvard doesn't know the income of all the Black students it's taking in. It just doesn't. It doesn't have that data. What we do have, though, is a team of Harvard economists, some of the most celebrated economists at Harvard, wanted to know how many students at Harvard come from the bottom 20% of the income range. That basically maps onto poverty. It's, more or less the equivalent of a family of four living on less than $30,000 a year. This team wanted to know how many students at Harvard come from that bottom group. And what they found was only 3% of the students at Harvard were coming from this bottom group that pretty much matches with the federal poverty line. That went up a few percentage points a few years later to 5%. Now, what you want to add this to is that over the last few years, Harvard has achieved perfect Black representation, in some cases better than perfect representation, so that their freshman class doesn't just match the Black population, but in most years, it's matching the Black population for the age ranges of 18 to 24.
Wow.
Very rare for any elite institution to achieve that. When you add these things together, the way they achieved it was by overrepresenting Black folks from the middle and upper classes. They basically used their resources to scoop up all the wealthy Black folks. So if we take that same study and we apply it to the Black students at Harvard, Harvard lets in about 154 Black students each year. 3 to 5% of them are going to come from this bottom 20%. And that takes you to maybe 7 of those 150 Black students come from the bottom. The rest are coming from the middle and upper class. And I kind of build on this because we have some smaller studies that say in the Ivy League, 40% of the Black students, or the students counted as Black to use the formal language, are from Black immigrant groups, which as a subset of Black Americans, they are our wealthiest, most educated group. Then when you go to Harvard specifically, Henry Louis Gates Jr., who's one of the directors of African American Studies, an extremely famous African American professor at Harvard, he's gone on record saying he thinks as many as 2/3 of the Black students at Harvard are going to be the fortunate sons and daughters of Black immigrants, and to a lesser extent biracial children. And this is really interesting for him to say because, of course, Obama is the biracial child of a Black immigrant and a white mother, and his alma mater is Harvard.
Harvard Law Review, right?
So it's a lot of data, but the end result is that over the time that affirmative action has, been a policy in effect, Harvard did it. Harvard achieved perfect racial diversity, but only 3% of those students are, going to be Black students from poverty, which means this has mostly been a benefit to the middle and upper classes of Black folks. And that when we really dig into subsets of Black people, it looks like it's mostly been a hyper focus on the wealthiest segments of the Black population, something not a lot of people know about, and that they, in my opinion, did a little bit of lawyerly deceit in the oral arguments. Harvard's defense or respondent said that 70% of the minority students at Harvard receive some sort of financial aid. Harvard actually gives a full ride to any family earning less than $75,000 a year, and they have bumped it up this year to $85,000, which is more than what, according to the census, 50% of American households make. So getting financial aid at Harvard is not equivalent to being in poverty. They give that to people who are above the middle of the middle class in America. And one way to look at that is that they're kind of like the Yankees. There's a small pool of Black students who have the resources and have been exposed to what's necessary to achieve, Harvard's standard of academic excellence. And Harvard uses its vast resources to be able to grab them all. And at the same time, it gets the social prestige associated with perfect diversity, perfect Black representation.
So Harvard is the reason why we have the ADOS movement. That's what you're saying.
That has come up a lot. I mean, one of the things Henry Louis Gates Jr. mentioned was that some of the students at Harvard, this was back in 2002, so few of them had two Black grandparents from this country that they started calling themselves the descendants. And I want to say this was before the ADOS movement, but the parallel is there.
Coach Lick, I agree with your comment. Toussaint, do you have something you'd like to add?
What are your observations on how income disparity is being handled in the Asian community?
One thing I think you hit on really well, as I see some people in the chat that were talking about why the piece was in the Atlantic and who haven't read it, which I think is awesome and have so much critiques. The whole piece is about the lack of a class consciousness when these programs are put together. And you make a point that in pop culture, because of the success of books and movies, the Crazy Rich Asians books and movie, there was a pushback in the Asian community to say, well, we're not all the model minority. And this movie is reinforcing a model minority myth. And you show, well, this is the reaction that you get in pop culture to show Asian people is not just kind of a wealthy, well-to-do model minority, but there's class disparities within people of the same ethnic makeup. A movie like Beef is about two Korean people, I believe, right? I think aren't they both supposed to be Korean?
One's Korean, the other's married to a Japanese man, and I can't remember if Ali Wong's character is Chinese herself. But they do play on the historical hostilities between Japanese folks and Koreans.
Oh, maybe, but yeah, you cite Beef, Anything, Everywhere, All at Once. There was another movie you cited as well that talks about
Always Be My Maybe.
Always Be My Maybe. That was kind of funny. I can't lie. Lyrics Born was in that. Shout out Bay Area.
So great question. Honestly, this was something I've been waiting years, literal years to get to mention. So there's so much in this piece that it's like I've been waiting to be able to connect all of these dots. But going back to 2018, Pew Research releases this report. It's a report that I loved, and it was one of the few. Pew Research is so big now and so commonly used that they just put tweet icons next to stats that they assume people are going to want to just like shout out without reading the actual piece. I'm not a fan of that, but it just shows you how mainstream it is as a research source. But so back in 2018, they actually did an intraracial study. They were looking at income inequality within racial groups. And from 1970 till about, let's say 2012, 2013, Black Americans had the highest income disparity between the top 10% of Black workers and the bottom 10%. In 1970, the top 10% was making 9 times more than the bottom 10%. In 2016, it was almost 10 times. Now, the big selling point here for Pew, though, even though they showed this for white folks, Black folks, Hispanic folks, Asian folks, was that Asians had overtaken Black Americans as the most unequal in terms of income of any racial group in the country. They were a little over 10. I had done further analysis with Matt Brunig, and it's kind of like now on any given year, Blacks or Asians are going to be the most unequal. But what was really interesting about this piece was that report got covered. It got covered in the Atlantic, actually, in an article by, I want to say her name is Iris Kuo in the Atlantic. It was called The Whitening of Asian Americans. And what they were using that specific report for is exactly what I would use it for. They were showing that all Asians are not, wealthy. They're not one, class-wise, they're not monolithically wealthy. It's concentrated. There's a lot of Asian groups that are actually poor, that have poverty rates comparable to Black Americans and Indigenous folks. And you find very quickly after that article, first off, more coverage of, the Pew report by other journalists, but then you start seeing it represented in popular culture. And this was really interesting to me because no one mentioned the Black part of that piece. No one talked about how prior to Asians overtaking Black Americans, Black folks had the highest degree of income inequality. It just wasn't covered, wasn't mentioned, wasn't a talking point, even though it was considered a completely valid observation made for Asian Americans. You go after 2018. I wasn't allowed to include this in the Atlantic because they felt it wasn't specific enough, just because it wasn't our continent, but I'm going to include it here. You have Parasite, and you have Squid Games, you have Beef, and you have Everything Everywhere All at Once, and you have Always Be My Maybe. And all of these movies that, in just a blunt sense, they tell Americans not all Asians have the same class experience, and they don't all interact with each other, on friendly terms. There are class hostilities here. And I say this in the piece, I can only envy how fast that has happened. I mean, when it comes to income disparity and wealth disparity in Asian America, popular culture is, putting that on display constantly. And, but, the same way that no one covered the Black side of the Pew report, popular culture for Black Americans on any continent is, it's really not covering those class disparities. I mean, I should be try to be precise here. At least nothing to my knowledge that covers disparities in Black Americans is receiving the the accolades that those movies and shows I just listed for Asian Americans is.
That's fair. Why do you think that is?
Me, it's funny because I know no one else is going to ask me that. My feeling, my feeling is that for Black American, I think it comes down to politics, and I think it comes down to the fact that a naive form of racial unity is very useful to political leadership for a racial group. For Black Americans, having us just widely associated with poverty, or at least associated enough that even if people are willing to say, oh, not all Black people are poor, but they still think our class disparities aren't that big a deal, or maybe they're softer, maybe they don't
Well, there's
matter.
people that believe race is class, and especially with the Black conversation, there's always us of one mind and one belief. And
So the way American activism works, you're normally pointing to the worst social afflictions possible, police violence, street violence, poverty, unemployment, all of that, to make your case for why Americans should, divert resources to trying to uplift your group. Well, being really well associated with poverty is a great position for that. And there's no political advantage to saying, actually, the Black poor are a minority of Black Americans, and most of the things that we leverage to move the conversation forward for Black Americans are actually concentrated on the Black poor. So, for example, there really isn't any political advantage to knowing or to saying out loud, hey, 80% of Black prisoners come from poverty. It's much, much more advantageous to imagine that incarceration, concentrated, poverty, all of these are kind of miasmas floating out there, ready to strike Black people at random. Asian Americans have a different situation. They're so associated with wealth that they've kind of moved to a degree to the territory that we find, say, Jewish Americans in. You're too associated with wealth. There's no way to convince Americans that they need to really care about your issues. It's kind of like on your own to win one legal battle at the time. So Asian Americans, if they can increase their association, well, I shouldn't say Asian Americans because they're not all doing this. For Asian American leadership, if they can increase awareness that Asians are poor, that moves them closer to the sorts of things you can leverage for American sympathy.
Asian American leadership. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we have Black American leadership, but it's said that other groups don't have these leaders.
That's not true at all.
Yeah.
It's like those people, as much as people love electoral politics, how can you say that?
I guess it depends. I mean, we all understand it. The personalities that have led Black American politics and Black American civil rights, there's these huge personalities, that become like the focus of, books, historical narratives. It's probably true that for whatever reason, bias maybe, or different ways of organizing, Asian Americans don't have that same, it's not easy to say, here's the Asian Martin Luther King, here's the Asian this, here's the Asian that. But I mean, they're organizing in this society, and the way things are organized here, it tends to be very hierarchical. There's usually somebody at the top, and that person normally got there by money and connection. So I'm assuming Asians have the same thing, even if I can't think of the famous Asian leadership.
What are we getting wrong with Black-white income disparity and affirmative action?
Was that someone's specific question or yours?
That was my question to you.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot to give you the questions beforehand. I wanted to give you a pop quiz. I was this close to emailing you the questions beforehand so you could be prepared. And I was like, you know what? F that guy.
F that Ben Burgess hair guy.
Yeah, F his Jewy hair.
I mean, in the piece, a few things that we're getting wrong with the income disparity, and this actually people who follow me probably got to see this play out on Twitter. I mean, the first thing is, I think the most important one is wealth. When we think about going 10 years back, really throughout the 2010s, the wealth gap between white Americans, the bottom 20% of white folks and the top 20% of white folks, the top 20%, they have 20 to 21 times the wealth of the bottom 20% of white folks. This is huge. For someone to have 20 times the amount of wealth that you have, it's a massive number. And that was a big part of fueling, in my opinion, Occupy Wall Street is a big part of fueling the rise of Bernie Sanders, the spinoffs like AOC. And I think it was part of, helping to revitalize the appeal of socialism among, the youngest white Americans, was that gigantic gap. Over on the Black side, the very same breakdowns, you look at the top 20% of Black folks and the bottom 20% of Black folks. The top 20% of Black folks have 1,300, and I want to say it's 1,320 times the wealth of the Black poor. Absolutely dwarfs the wealth gap on the white side. It receives no mention. And this is the part that I say people may have seen play out on Twitter. Professor William Sandy Daugherty Jr., he's been the main person who has been cited for the racial wealth gap, cited in The Atlantic. I mean, he's even written about it on The Atlantic, cited by NPR, cited by New York Times. Any mainstream magazine really that's dealt with the racial wealth gap has cited him and his one of his main collaborators, Derek Hamilton. And there's a very popular graph that looks at each of these groups, bottom 20%, the next, all the way to the top. It shows you what the Black median is and the white median is at each of those income groups. And what Daugherty wants to focus on, and it's not that he shouldn't because it is relevant, is the Black-white disparity. But all the information is right there in that graph for you to also care about the Black to Black disparity. And people just gloss over it, which has been one of these things that I've watched since 2017. And it's the reason why I say we have a dissonance about class when it comes to Black Americans. It doesn't even matter if it's on the graph in front of us. will not see it. We're just too conditioned to not view class as genuinely meaningful for Black Americans. So we will have a policy, a racial diversity policy, and we'll just assume once you remove the racial barrier, all the Black folks are playing on a level playing field. And we won't address the fact that, like, okay, you took away the racial barrier. Now my application is sitting next to someone who has more than 1,000 times the wealth that I do. It's obvious.
The ability to pay for SAT classes, the ability to have tutors, the ability to go to better schools at the primary to high school level.
Every level. I mean, the first thing that I got to write about for the New York Times had, how much joy should we get out of, test optional policies? And the blind spot there was everything related to education is associated with income. SAT is associated with income, GPA, whether or not you can play sports. I know you've already gotten to talk about this, Jason, that sports participation is now tethered to family income. It's not just, it's your applications, all of your essays about what you want to do at college, the personal statement, the SOP, each of these. And then you have these little things like whether you're a dean's person of interest, which is, are you in some way somebody that the dean cares about getting into the school? And that definitely comes through connection. So at every level, this is connected to income and wealth. And, I didn't get to express this frustration in the piece, but the people at the lower income levels, particularly white folks, the people that the lower white working class is stigmatizing, the people that they think are getting a handout that the government is helping, is the Black poor. And that's just this terrible irony of this whole situation, because didn't really get anything from 45 years of affirmative action in higher education. I don't think this problem was, affirmative action isn't directly stopping Black folks from obtaining bachelor's degrees, but it is making people think that something was already done when clearly it wasn't.
Is this the folly of racial democracy?
Yeah. I mean, I know between this show and a few other, of your peers, Jason, Toussaint, everyone has, I want to say it's Adolph Reed who popularized making fun of, I forget who he's quoting, but somebody said, that we'll know that we've achieved equality when there are as many. It's kind of like when the Black lawyers match the white lawyers and the amount of Black ditch diggers match the white ditch diggers, and we've made it, with no concern about the income disparity between ditch diggers and lawyers. I mean, really what I hope a lot of people get from this piece is that if your only focus is racial diversity, it doesn't matter where you get the bodies from. You just need people of a certain color. And I mean, for me, and something that we've talked about on this show before, it's 45 years. A lot of times when you are, marginalized in two ways within a group, what you hear from that group's leadership, Black women's rights are just like a famous case study of this. You get told to wait. You're told to wait and wait and wait. And eventually, once, the overall standard of living for, Black leadership is good, then they'll attend to your problem. Well, it's been 45 years. I don't think affirmative action was about to pivot in the 46th year and you know what? Now we should help the Black poor get in here a little bit more. That shit wasn't coming.
Well, does some of that stuff start with universal programs though, that are not race-based? Free pre-K, things like that.
In my opinion, yeah.
Free childcare.
I think universal programs would be a great way to go. And honestly, I mean, the more it's tethered to income and awareness that, like, I mean, I'd be interested in your thoughts, Toussaint's thoughts, but a lot of times these programs, even when they can get funding, they don't appreciate that there's, say, degrees within each of those classes. and what somebody right on the cusp of poverty needs to make, say, a universal pre-K program accessible to them is a bit different than the person who's surviving on half the poverty threshold. So, the more these programs can really appreciate how, the real value of the dollar, I think they do better.
Toussaint?
Well said. What he said. Are you writing a book? Is there a book in the works? I want to be able to tell people, see, that's why you need to read Bertrand Cooper. I'm not necessarily going to read the book, but
he's writing a novel. It's writing a novel.
That sentence warms my heart. I've never even considered the possibility that somebody would say that sentence.
Do that. You should do it. It's gonna be dope. Come on.
We're in the process. I have a literary agent. I've been reached out to by publishers, and it's really, I've been given the okays where it's like I finished the book proposal, they're putting it on the pile, they're gonna read it, and if it's even half good, it will get published.
Awesome. It's a novel.
Is it called Good Hair, Bad Life?
Good Hair, Bad Life. Biracials in Love.
Biracials in Love. Almost a Native.
They don't let you name that. That they don't let you name those books.
Shea Moisture in Action.
You know what? I should go with the biracial classic, everyone's favorite. It's legendary. Too black for the black kids, too white for the white kids.
Don't call it that. Don't call it that. And a picture of you like kicking a rock at a playground with like black kids throwing fucking grape Kool-Aid on you.
I'm going to take a page out of Colin Kaepernick's book because we're like 3 years apart, but you watch his movie and you would think he was raised in like 1930s in Texas.
I refuse. That made me so mad. I tried, like every time I try to like
Almost Cherokee by Bertrand Cooper.
Every time I try to be supportive and something comes out, I'm just like, oh God, this movie is just so white mama, they won't let me use the drinking fountain. Well, why do you need to use the drinking fountain? We gave you all that filtered water. In your backpack there, Colin.
I have no idea what the book will be called. Hopefully it's something cool. Hopefully they don't make me. The other thing is like those subtitles that they do now,
right?
Where like they give it a title and then you have to do this whole provocative sentence nonsense. I'm not even going to worry about that. Light story of a beige man in a colored world. Yeah, I mean,
forward by Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Coates is too busy writing Superman. He doesn't have the time.
That's true.
I stepped away from the Superman book to sit here and think about the struggle of this black man.
Bertrand Cooper. A list.
Your Coates sounds like a thoughtful Mike Tyson.
He has that accent that was it the Baltimore.
Oh,
I can't do it. I'm not a Coates fan. I'm not a fan of the wannabe James Baldwin in the 21st century.
See, unlike Blueface, where I like Coates' prose, but many of the arguments he put forward are, the bane of my existence. Just
because you said that, when they come back with the counter offer to your book, we love it. We love the proposal. Can you be a little bit more Coatesy? We need a little bit more Baldwin. Tell us about your black pain.
Somebody, what do they call it? Memoir of a J. Crew Affirmative Action Model by Bertrand Cooper. So see, I love this one because I worked at a J. Crew before in a segregated mall where like the one side was the stores that had more money.
All malls are segregated. The great words of Chris Rock. There is the white mall and the mall white people used to go to.
This was segregated in one mall. They put all the cheap stores next to the food court and it had its own entrance, and J. Crew was on the other side where they sell cars.
Sold cars. What ghetto ass Jersey mall was this?
I mean, Jersey's the land of mall rats. Come on. I mean, we're doing everything.
That's true.
But I've told many people this. All of this is just about one day getting to be the next Jake from State Farm. That's the goal. That's what I'm leading to. Jason would like me to do something more impressive. I'm going to be Jake from State Farm.
But when you are working at the J. Crew at the white end of the mall, do you not understand how to fold the shirts because you never had hangers in your life? And whenever you see them, it's like mommy dearest. You get like flashbacks.
They give me a board.
They gave you the board.
Yeah.
And you bent over like to get hit by it. And you're like, no, you need to fold the shirts, Bertram. Yes, sir. And that's where I found my freedom, in the khaki aisle. I found my voice that day.
I would love to narrate my book, but only do it in that voice.
Only do it in the freed slave voice. My name is Bertrand Cooper. I have a Southern accent, but I grew up in New Jersey.
And I'm gonna do the Frederick Douglass beard, Olive Lover. I'm gonna do the heavy side part.
That's the only way that white and black middle class people can take you seriously is if you have a fucked off afro and you talk real like with a lot of confidence and then refer to everybody as brother.
Who's that cat you told me to, what's his name? He's from like Grey's Anatomy or whatever. And then he did that one play naked. You told me to be like him or something.
Wait, who?
He's like the light-skinned dude.
Who is
Jesse Williams?
The Jesse guy.
Yeah.
Jesse Williams, is that his name, Toussaint?
Jesse.
Yeah.
What's his name? Jesse something.
Yeah, you told me to like shave.
Jesse
Yeah, he like, yeah, you gotta shave, be clean shaven, have the short hair, and then say something about racial inequality, and then make sure a white person tears up, and bam, you're a star.
I tell you, it was hard to not cut my hair to like perfect news anchor length and just try to get this Don Lemon money.
You would have fucked it up, man, because apparently you still go into supercuts, so you would have fucked it up, and they would have had you looking like Kid from Kid and Play. You would have been all fucked up.
I didn't even go to supercuts in Jersey, bro.
It was racist. That's why.
Racist supercuts.
Racist supercuts in Jersey. What am I supposed to do with this?
I cannot wait to get a haircut again. I'm almost at a year. It's terrible.
Can we go to the blackest barbershop in Compton with you? Like me, you, and Cedric just go to like the blackest barbershop in like Watts or something?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Of course.
Can we record it for the show?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how exciting it is going to be to see me just get like a one with a skin fade, but we can do that.
He's going to cry because it's been a year. It's gonna be emotional.
I'm going to be, look at this. Look, see all I've done?
Look at that.
All that hard work.
All that Burgess.
or we could just go and get it cut in somebody's front yard. I'm sure if we walk around the right hood, there's somebody doing real good fades in the front yard.
Oh, so I can get that ammonia slapped on the back of my neck like don't be a menace.
Not even alcohol. You're just ammonia. Dirty ass clippers. The guy's just getting his haircut with hepatitis.
You're giving me like memories of when I'd go in and my haircut's all wonky, but I'm fine with it. And I'd be like, please don't line me up. And they're like, oh, don't worry, I got you, bro. And then they just line that shit up way too tight. And now I got this little widow's peak in the middle that's going to slowly grow out, just looking ridiculous.
Oh my God. Back in my day, Bertram, I used to give fades and an S curl for $20 in the back of my house.
Can you explain to me why old black people always change my name to Bertram?
That's just what it is. Deal with it, goddammit.
It's true. It's true. Well, old black people had a hard time with Kanye as well. Canyon West is what his name was.
You should hear me call Toussaint by her real name too.
He refuses to get it right. Just refuses.
I mess up her real name so bad. She's like, you can call me that on the show because you mess it up so bad.
I only know M. Toussaint as M. Toussaint, sometimes Faceless Voice of Reason.
That's right.
You'll meet her if you come to the East Coast for one of the shows in the East Coast. You'll meet her.
That's true.
It's never going to happen because you like to give me like 30 minutes notice. You'll be like, yo, can you make it to New York?
I do that. Thanks for reminding me of how shitty of a friend I am.
I'm kidding. You're all right.
We are still going to Pioneer Chicken.
That's this place from your childhood, right?
Yes, there's only one. There's only two, and they're both in SoCal. And we found this out. We found out where they were located after the thing we did in Irvine. We're all at Kathy Lee's house, and me and Sid were talking about it, and Burgess as well, and making a homie trip to Pioneer Chicken. It's a game changer.
Real quick, I just realized. I mean, normally we go to Champagne Room and we're answering questions, but I do want to just tell folks real quick. There's not a really magical story to how I got into the Atlantic. When I was working at the New York Times, at one point they switched me to another editor. Me and that editor got along real well, and they moved over to the Atlantic. And when they got over there, they asked me if I'd be interested in writing anything on affirmative action. And I said, basically I've been waiting to say this for a while. So I put forward the pitch, and we got started. Now, they had a good deal of faith in me. They were willing to bite the bullet on this, but I had, depending on the moment, 3 or 4 fact checkers. I had to go over everything. Harvard is a massive institution. Even when you're the Atlantic, you take that into consideration. So we were getting, somebody I've been citing the research of for years. We were getting comments officially from their team. We had to contact Harvard specifically to ask if they had better statistics than what, I had. And there was a lot of me defending each line. Pretty much all the most controversial things in there, or the things that most demonstrate that there is class concerns in Black America. I'm a bit obnoxious. I would write a whole paragraph just spilling out my guts. And then other times I don't care about their edits and just be like, sounds great, smiley face.
Sounds great, smiley face.
I'm real binary semen on there. But to the one person saying being in the NYT, okay, got it. It's like, it is that. It's luck. If anyone's trying to do this, I got turned down by the Atlantic probably 3 or 4 times. I'd make it to the second stage. The editors were always kind. They'd give me more advice, but I couldn't get anything through. Then eventually I just cold pitched current affairs, through one of those online submissions. They got back to me.
Love that piece.
Yeah. Once the internet, via people like Jason and M. Toussaint, like that piece, and the online folks validated that, seeing my writing in print, won't destroy anything. That's when people like the New York Times are willing to take a risk or take a chance on me. From the New York Times, it just kind of goes there. But somebody's got to give you a shot, and the left mags are, I guess, more willing to.
And that's the only thing you ever published in current affairs, right?
That's the only thing I ever published in current affairs. Yeah.
Were you their diversity hire?
Am I there? I want to say
there's other Black people that are published in there.
I think there's one, actually, maybe 2.
I think there's a couple. Yeah. I don't know if Adolph's published in there.
They've got some folks, but yeah, I went from that to just a bunch of podcasts, and then New York Times, and I mean, at some point, it's trying to
when the Atlantic asked you to write for the affirmative action, were you like Oprah Winfrey in Color Purple? We're like, all my life I had to fight.
Yes.
Yes. I sent them just a picture of Oprah with that one eye kind of down.
Is Sophia here now?
And I told them, well, look who's coming. And now I'm going to be on MSNBC and then NPR next week.
Hey, Toussaint, when Bertrand got on MSNBC, he looked at that editor, until you do right by me.
Ain't no good. No good gonna come to you.
Just to let everybody know, we will not be going into the champagne room tonight because we are doing movie night tomorrow night. We'll be watching Pump Up the Volume, the 1990 classic that is unavailable anywhere on any streaming service. You can watch a little bit of it on YouTube, but we will be playing it in its entirety. And then my favorite part, everybody gets to comment on what they think about that movie. So I'm really stoked for that. Will you be joining us tomorrow night, Bert, for that?
I'm going to be finishing a book review, unfortunately. Sorry.
You know what sucks about Bert? Like, you've been wanting to hang with him, and he's like, dude, I got homework.
He's going to be on Reading Rainbow. He got to do his book report.
That's who he's going to be. He wants to be all these other things. He's going to be LeVar Burton.
Listen, I take that in a second, all right? I need that passive income, and I can read books to children as well as the next person.
But you don't have to take my word for it.
Man, is that show still on? Do you think I could apply? I could restart it. I could launch it.
You could right now. You are the perfect person for Reading Rainbow. You're like, hey, you guys like diversity?
I think I'd like to do a bunch of angry shit for like the next 10 years. And then once I'm like old, just suddenly become like the, beige Mr. Rogers, and only certain people will know, like, I used to do something completely different. Now I'm just hanging out with puppets and trains and
all
the biracial children.
Is that how people know if we sold out Toussaint? If we become like a puppet show and just do kid stuff?
That'd be dope.
Super chat.
Yeah, super chat. Go ahead.
Toussaint, you got to read it out loud. This fool's reading in his head. You are so horrible for this job.
I thought you were going to read it.
I was waiting for Toussaint to read it. She reads them all the time.
I'll read them. This is from Jeremy S. How much pushback did you get from comfortable liberals, white or not, for this piece? Better or worse than Current Affairs one? Than the Current Affairs one?
8 people read the Current Affairs one.
I got I would say it was one. I got a lot of pushback. It was always just one level of pushback, because I would receive it and then overreact and basically spill my guts and say like how this sentence ties into everything that I need to get across and how important what we're doing is. And then they would be like, okay, that makes sense. Now, sometimes it wasn't that. Sometimes it was more just like a bunch of nerdy stuff about like the federal poverty line. And even though it's controversial for some things, it's still the gold standard. Everything we've written about the poor experience, all of that research that's looking at what is life like when you're poor is in some way tethered to the federal poverty line. So even if it's controversial, even if people think it's too low, it's necessary. So I would get one level of pushback. I got a lot of it frequently, but the team at the Atlantic was the one that I got to work with was great. They always they basically let me keep it all. As far as Current Affairs, I got to work with, shouldn't use his real name. Light of Gold was the editor on that. And I didn't receive pushback really. Current Affairs, they let me keep my vision, and everything was about.
That shit was so long.
What was that?
I said that's why that shit was so goddamn long.
It was all style stuff was basically the only thing that would come up. But yeah, Lida was great. So not much pushback there.
We have another comment.
Oh, awesome.
And this is from Chelsea 100. One thing about Bert is he has great hair. He'll go places with that wig.
I can attest that it's real. I've seen it in different iterations. A
real wig?
I've seen it short blonde. I've seen it now all grown out and mixedy. Yeah, Bert is so LA cool. We met up at a Denny's because him
and my girl love Denny's.
For some reason.
I was trying to leave her out of it. I was trying to leave her safe. And they came so fly to the Denny's. I was like, these are
were they matching like they're from New Jersey?
No, they was not Jersey.
We are We're both always have a look, but we're very opposite. Like she is always like
They look like they had stylists, Toussaint.
Wow.
I believe in my soul that someone put those outfits together that were not them.
You brought in a rack of clothes.
Brought in a rack of clothes. Where are you guys going, Denny's? I need you to look prestigious, but not pretentious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the look they had. I felt like the biggest piece of shit in Denny's. I looked
you
like
have one pair of Zoomy skinny jeans and some you've been getting by for the last 10 years.
Skinny Dickies for the past 10 years. Commando.
Definitely Commando, always trying to show some And you should hear him scoping the waitresses. He's always on to the next one. Yeah.
This dude.
Especially at an LA Denny's.
LA Denny's was a different experience. Oh my goodness.
Should we do Strom's question? I don't know who wants to read it.
We have a super chat from Strom McCallum. What publication should my redneck self pitch to?
Has anyone read Strom's writing?
White Man Quarterly. PGA Monthly. Anything by the NRA.
My best guess from my limited experience would have been Current Affairs, although I know they had a big, switch up in staff. I mean, the editor I worked with isn't there anymore. I wrote to Jockman before. They didn't respond to me. Dissent is who I'm doing the book review for. They have a very scholarly feel, like they advertise, graduate schools in there sometimes. So if you're not writing something more academic, I don't know if it's going to get in there. And then I don't know how you just, if you're coming from the left, I don't know how you just jump in.
It's not as easy as people think. It really isn't.
No.
It's not everybody wants blind submissions. It's like any other business. You got to know somebody, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised Current Affairs got, at that point, I've been getting pitches turned down for like 2 years. Yeah.
Somebody said compact.
Again, it's not that easy. I mean, you can try, but it is not that easy. You kind of got to know somebody. Toussaint, do you have any parting words for Bert Cooper? I don't want to say his name wrong again since he's getting so offended by it.
According to Jean Bajlan, he is now Bertie. Very British Jean Bajlan has come up with that name. You're down as Bertie on our calendar because Jean put your name in.
He put it as Bertie. Yeah, he did. He did.
Certain people have been trying to give me that nickname for a long time, and I've always been able to resist it. But I guess since you guys control the calendar,
Right.
He who controls the calendar controls the names.
That's right.
Bert, I was really stoked that you got this piece in the Atlantic. I'm really stoked for your appearance on MSNBC. I know it's going to be brief, and they're going to try to bum rush you as you try to give your answers. If you have 5 minutes. Yeah. But I have confidence that you'll be able to shock the world in your 5 minutes.
Do you think the world's watching?
I mean, you said MSNBC, not C-SPAN. If you would have said C-SPAN, no.
All right.
Somebody's watching.
Yeah, MSNBC. Again, unless something with that submarine comes up, I could get booted till next week,
Were you mad when that happened? You had the right outfit on. Button up. He took the good outfit off, Toussaint. He had a better outfit on. Black motherfucker. He probably had a shirt and tie.
Nah, I can't do the shirt.
You came like super stylish, like I'm from LA stylish. Did you have sunglasses on? Andrew Tate style, like
straight up, just a polo. That's
you had a polo on.
Yeah.
Top button or what'd you do? Did you top button it?
Unbuttoned.
Unbuttoned. You're really feeling casual there.
Okay. On
Jesus.
I
Who the
mean,
hell is this guy?
Thinks he's Jason Miles.
You think you're a goddamn district manager on his day off? What is this?
first off, everybody's lucky I don't have like all the earrings, the jewelry, florals. My hair at least is a natural color. Like I'm coming in pretty low key to this.
I thought you'd have a pink hoodie on and, you know,
I've done that.
cigar.
Yeah. I mean, a cigar, that for the right audience.
For the right audience.
That's when you know Bert sold out, when he starts doing the Andrew Tate pivot.
Cigar behind the ear.
Cigar behind the ear. Like J. Jonah Jameson with a cigar.
You gonna watch on MSNBC? You don't even have cable.
I don't have it. If I didn't have the movie night, I would have drove up. We could have had a watch party. We could have done the MSNBC, and then we all could have went to Pioneer Chicken. Celebrated.
Jesus.
Well,
you got it all planned out.
I had it all planned out. We could have went bowling after that.
I'm on MSNBC. I am sorry to the people in the comments. Like, the paywall sucks. I wish you didn't have one. I mean, you're all creative. You figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Don't let them complain, because they yell at me all the time about how stupid I am. Like, all you need is a VPN. It's like, it's a little more complicated than that, people.
All you need is a VPN.
They always tell me, you're paying for JSTOR? Ah, they're so mean.
Yeah. Don't worry, man. Once this MSNBC money comes in, I'll send you a free PDF.
Don't lie to people, making them think that you get anything for them 5 minutes.
If anything, I should be paying them is probably how it's looked at.
Yes. Mama, I was on TV. What? I was on MS, but I stopped hearing you said M. What? Cinemax.
It's
You
about
like doing porn?
It's about becoming Jake from State Farm. I'm telling you. I mean, Coates, he did the whole political thing, but then he went to writing Captain America and Black Panther.
Captain America.
Either way, there's a path for me.
American, African Americans, ADOS, Captain America.
With Jordan Peterson.
I've been in a room with Jordan Peterson once. We didn't interact, but it's happened.
You know what he did, Toussaint? He called me.
Is that right?
He texted me, dude. I was like, where the fuck are you?
Because I had started off at just Occidental College, and then at the very end, they were like, "Oh, we're having this fundraiser. You should come to it." And it's like, I've never been invited to a fundraiser. I don't know people who have funds. And I show up at the fundraiser.
You mean a rent party?
It's a literal fundraiser. Yo, the Donnie Thornberry, that is on point. My hair is very on that. But yeah, I'm just in this room and people are raising actual money. I'm there with, just people with a lot of money. And then there's Jordan Peterson, who's taller than I anticipated.
Yeah,
did he smell like meat?
I didn't get that close.
What if he would have said, "You're the boy that wrote that piece in the Atlantic"?
The boy.
The boy.
Yes, your boy, I'm interested in you. How you feel.
Spotless room you have.
You don't want to see my room. My room is a travesty.
Just streetwear everywhere.
Streetwear
Everywhere.
Expensive toys.
Bootleg.
I'm just like on hype beast 24/7.
That's all. These pictures hella bootleg Jordans everywhere.
What do you splurge on, Bertrand?
I mean, he's not wrong. It is close.
I'm telling you, the fit he had on was not. It was. I was like, you are a nigga, fine nigga. You are.
Coming for you, nigga.
And that outfit.
Listen, all right. I told my sad story. Look, you don't want to see me when I was going to them 3 high schools, all right? I looked terrible, all right? I can finally afford some clothes. I wanted to look nice at the Denny's. I didn't want to embarrass you, man.
You did, because I looked like your dope fiend older brother that was asking for a loan.
You look like that anyway.
Nice.
You are older than me. You are clearly the brother that dad had with the black lady before he had the white second girlfriend.
I'm OJ's first kid.
That's right.
Oh my God. I can't see the comments because of the whole issue I'm having. I'm afraid to see the comments.
You called Strom a dandy in front of Bertram?
Did I?
Oh, yeah, at your LA show.
Oh, Strom was there. You met Strom.
I did.
Okay, look, we've been messing with Bert for too long and his streetwear.
His streetwear.
How poor, before we go, let's do this real quick. Since we're not going to Champagne Room, you guys are going to get some free champagne. How poor was Bert in school? Because he's talking about how poor he was. I want to know if I can outpour him. You know how you're supposed to get new shoes? And that was like my dad's thing. Like, I'm not going to pay this child support, but I'll get you some shoes. And we had a store in the Bay Area called Copeland's, and there's another one called Big Five. It was a sporting goods store. And there were shoes on the wall that were like the new shoes of the season. And then there were shoes on the table that was like old closeout shit. And I could look at the wall, but I was finna get something from the table. The table was like, you get 2 pairs of shoes for like $25 or whatever, $50. And one year I got Magic Johnson's. Do you remember Magic Johnson? You don't even know about this. Toussaint, you know about this. Magic Johnson had his own shoes.
Yeah, I did know about that.
Do you know what it was like going to school with Magic Johnson shoes after he said he had AIDS?
Whoa.
When I was 14, Jason, nobody was taking me to buy shoes because my mom was buying crack. I had a girl my freshman year ask for my number. There was no number to give her because I didn't have a landline. There's a distinct day I remember where the only thing to eat in the house was stuffing with water. And my mom had gone to the Publix because we were down in Florida at the time. And she got the day old bagels from the dumpster. And that's when I decided I was going to start stealing food.
Toussaint, you want to outpour us all?
Well, I already told you guys about my Jordans from the flea market.
he was tap dancing on them. He wasn't even playing basketball. He had air bojangles.
Making sandwiches on the
he was doing everything but playing basketball.
I got baptized to get food at the church.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, it depends on what you was getting baptized in. I mean, what church was it?
I am Jewish, bro. I was 14. I went by myself.
Get a recircumcised? Like what?
And I was like, yeah, sure, give me that. They were serving Kool-Aid and chicken. I'm not joking. They were serving Kool-Aid and chicken at the church. They fed you once on Wednesdays.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I told the story in the Champagne Room about how we found out because we met a black Jewish dude in Savannah, Georgia, that took us to the synagogue, and the rabbi fed us. It's one of the oldest synagogues in America. Actually, it was in Savannah, and we were kind of like weirded out. Like, dude, you're like a black dude. Did you convert? Like, what is this? He's like, no, by birthright. And it was interesting. He was not all Bertram looking.
You know
but we didn't have to get recircumcised like you to get the food. The rabbi pity on us.
I don't think you're using that term right.
Recircumcised.
You can't get recircumcised. You go back.
Maybe they thought you had too much meat.
Oh my God.
Oh
my God. black joke? This is where we are now.
You know, though, I got to go with the cliche. As fun as it is to say how broke I was, it's like it went over my head. Like I've seen some home videos, and I can't even watch me and my family on a screen.
He was broke enough to have a camcorder. Huh?
My cousins had a camcorder. Uncle sold illegal cable boxes and PlayStations. He was the dude who climbed up on the pole and hooked that whole John up for it. So he always had the good stuff, but I can't even watch this because I'm stuck looking around the room. I'm like, this house is filthy. All this shit lining the corners. They raised children here.
Bert was a little dirty faced, light skinned kid with the biggest green boogers.
Oh my God.
That's dirty looking. All the pictures of me when I'm a kid, it's just like there's trash everywhere. Got the futon on the floor, drinking out a 2-liter Pepsi. It's just
Bert was one of them kids that had cavities on his baby teeth with them silver
caps on his baby teeth.
No, I was born with the strong field teeth. You know, they survived the Pepsi.
Bert, I didn't get school clothes, and then when I went to high school, and I grew out of my clothes from the previous year, and I had like rayon was in style at that time, and I had grew out of the rayon, so it was ripping at the shoulders, and when no one would look, I would staple it.
Oh my gosh!
In between periods,
I'm teaching Negro how to sew. Please.
Yeah, I still don't know how to sew.
I mean, clearly it affected you because you still don't wear clothes that fit.
Man refuses to wear clothes that fit.
I should ask my daughter if that's true.
You should ask your daughter if your pants fit.
She is constantly embarrassed.
Skinny Dicky is what they called him.
Skinny Dick is what they called him. I'm wearing some right now. Can you see? Oh,
I'm waiting for you to go full yoga pose and just kick it up.
I took my daughter last night. I took my daughter to. I have a tour laminate behind me. It was a big tour for us when almost 9 years ago we went on tour with the band called Godflesh, and they were in town in San Diego. And I emailed the main dude, Justin Broderick, and he got me and my kid into the show. And we caught the tail end. We got stuck at the border. It took us a while to get across, but afterwards we're hanging out. And this doesn't mean anything to her, right? The magnitude of who this man is in his genre. And he's talking to me about I asked him how his kid was doing. I knew he had a kid, and we're catching up. And he goes, "My kid just doesn't care." He's British. "My kid doesn't care about what I do." And then we're talking about how kids don't care. And I look over at her and I was like, I know, right? And I was like, I told him, I took her on tour, and they looked at there's a few people sitting around. They're like, "She went on tour," and she just looked like, yeah, don't care. Don't care who you are. Don't care who my dad has brought me around for 1,000,000 years. Just don't care. But that's why she doesn't date musicians. It's all a strategy.
We done?
He doesn't date musicians.
She doesn't. She does not. I need her to date a Bertram type guy that's got big ambitions. Not a mixtape.
I do not have big ambitions. This is all a happy accident. Get out of here.
I don't know. It sounds a lot better than what did Biggie say? Eating sardines for dinner.
Yes, it does sound better than eating sardines for dinner. Ridiculous.
Bert was walking in his friend's house, hella excited, like, "Ooh, y'all got food everywhere in these cabinets." Mama, they got 2 refrigerators. They got 2 refrigerators.
I mean, you saw in the New York Times piece, I told that story where eventually, like, friends' parents would be like, "Yeah, you can't come over between 5 and 7."
Damn.
He came over with a bag. He came over with a bag.
That would imply I was gonna have leftovers, bro.
Right.
The reason why they didn't want you over there, it wasn't because you ate too much. It was because of the flies.
Poverty jokes.
Oh, okay. We have to stop. I'm sure people are totally frightened at this conversation, right?
I love that this is the conversation before I go on MSNBC. When you say I have big ambitions, it's like would I record like an hour and a half of career killers if I had big ambitions?
This is gonna give you stripes. This is do you know who's interviewing you? Or can you say?
Yeah, Katie Tur.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow. Are you gonna say something real mean to her right when you get on? Like I used to watch you when I was a kid.
Mean. You know, when I was real little.
When I was real many moons ago.
I'm gonna be cordial. I'm gonna be presentable. I'm gonna do all the stuff, man. Do it all.
No cigar though. I think you should go cigar. If you're gonna have the polo shirt 3 buttons down, you might as well go cigar.
I don't even know how to smoke a cigar.
Doesn't matter as long as you have one. It looks like you know what you're doing. No one knows how to smoke a cigar.
Nothing works like that.
No one knows how to smoke.
Who is going to call you out on not knowing what the hell to do with a cigar?
What's it? That Tate guy.
Andrew Tate does not know how to smoke a cigar. He wouldn't know. I don't know what Andrew Tate knows. You know what? That's who I don't want to fuck with because he actually does know how to fight. His fighting game is for real. No, but also, can I tell people about Bert's? Bert actually knows how to fight as well.
It's not as useful to me if people know.
Oh, I mean, who's really gonna walk up to you? I read your piece in the Atlantic, nigga. Like nobody.
I like it that it's like Charlie Murphy's ghost is coming up to me.
Charlie Murphy's ghost.
It's like Mr. T. He thinks Mr. T is gonna. You're fine, dude. No one's gonna try to challenge you physically from anything you've written.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be for anything I've written.
It's not like I've been around you. You don't walk around talking shit.
That's true.
That's true.
You got to be prepared. You always got to be ready, especially in LA. Like I prefer for people to be like, he's beige. I can take him. He's beige. He's wearing florals. I've seen him with pearl earrings. It's going down.
Pearl earrings. Oh my god.
You wear pearl earrings? I don't know. This new school of cats, they do wear drop earrings.
Would that be zesty?
That would be kind of zesty.
Okay.
Jason just learned the word zesty. I'm
so scared to use certain words sometimes when I write these intros now after you got me so bad on zesty.
Have you maybe you've seen him. Have you seen Israel Adesanya?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He would be an example, I guess, of the pearl earrings.
Word.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do a whole nother show about Bert and fighting. I do want to do a fighting show, actually.
Of course.
You always send me clips of people just getting like their teeth knocked out. Like every other day, it's just somebody getting viciously knocked out.
According to you, that was your life every day growing up.
Jesus.
You always add parts. I never said that. I never said that.
Every day.
In between mud sandwiches, he was watching bum fights.
Mud sandwiches. Oh my god.
I mean, I've heard your stories at the Bay. You make it sound like not great.
I mean, to your point, you don't know you're poor until someone tells you are sometimes. It just is what it is.
And then have you had any time on the show where you just tell them all about like your days of hanging out with escorts?
No, I like to try to keep that a secret, but now that it's out,
Jason's wild, everybody.
cavorting with that wasn't my
Like,
Jesus face.
Let's just make it clear. Jason had exactly the life of a Bay Area punk rocker. It's all of it.
I believe it.
There are no surprises when Jason is
There
telling you.
really
Yep.
isn't. I always have stayed away from drugs and alcohol. Everything else, I've been totally on board with. All forms of debauchery, drugs and alcohol, big no for me.
Homoflexual.
What is that? That's a comment somebody just left.
Yeah, Jason, a real freak, big homoflexual. Tease.
I don't know what that means.
I like it.
I heard the phrase homoflexible before.
Oh, I think we're hitting cancellation territory and non-monetizable territory.
We hit that when you played that drop.
I don't know if that's what's getting us kicked off because we've done shows just in, and it's fine. And then Ben Burgess does a show, and then YouTube goes, "Yeah, you can't monetize this Ben Burgess show." It's like, what was he talking about?
His hair.
Time travel.
Time travel.
I didn't know you'd been kicked off anything. All right, we should end it. It's all my fault.
Oh, really? That's where we're going to go with this?
Mhm.
Bert, thank you again. Wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there are links in the description to Bert's new piece, The Failure of Affirmative Action. It is in the Atlantic now. Don't forget, tomorrow, Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific time, we will be watching on the Discord server. Pump up the volume. You can't get it anywhere but here. Toussaint, you have anything to say in closing?
In closing, this has been fun. Good job, Bert.
I love having Bert on. Having Bert on the show and Teray and Cedric is like when Eddie Murphy came on Arsenio. It's always a good time.
This is the first time I've been on with Toussaint in a minute.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's good to hear you again.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Yeah, she sees.
I see you.
Toussaint, ready?
Yep.
Say it.
We are out.
Oh, it moved.
That's what she said.